Saktivel sir, shall we start this?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Yes.
I'll stop the screen, sir. Yeah.
Good morning to all. I am happy to welcome you all for the webinar on career opportunities. I am delighted to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Tushar Pandit, on behalf of School of Computer Science and Engineering, Vellore Institute of Technology, Chennai. Tushar Pandit, a senior director and delivery partner with Cognizant, brings in rich and diverse experience in management and delivery of large enterprise software development and support programs for global customers. His core area of expertise is in application outsourcing, system integration, operational excellence, and driving sustainable growth. Over 24 years of deep understanding of IT systems and processes help him drive his passion for harnessing and fostering technology to grab solutions for clients' critical business problems. Tushar loves being agile by working across different domains: insurance, retail and investment banking, life sciences, and energy and utilities. Empowering teams and creating leaders has assisted him in successfully running a large IT portfolios for global IT companies. He holds a bachelor degree in engineering from Pune University and a postgraduate diploma in software application engineering. Outside of work, his interests range from astronomy, reading and studying about history and ancient civilization. He loves traveling, driving to new places and in new countries, and enjoys planning trips with his family and friends. I once again welcome Tushar Pandit to enlighten the session. Thank you. Please, sir.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so students, today what I'm going to talk about basically is a little bit about the IT sector. I'm going to tell you about what is it that the IT sector does. Right? I'm also going to speak about what can you expect to do in the IT sector, right? What are the opportunities that exist, or what role can you play? How do you grow in this IT sector? And then most importantly, I'm also going to talk about what we, right? Because when we are running IT projects, when we are running IT engagements and IT businesses, it is extremely important for us to also have an eye on what's going to come, right? What's going to happen in the next 2 years, next 5 years, next 10 years, right? And we have to build an IT workforce, which includes people like you and me, who will be able to work in the new ways of working that are going to come. So I'm going to speak a little bit about that. And last but not the least, I'm going to touch upon what do we know. So there are hundreds of IT engineers who join my projects, right, almost every year throughout the year, and I'm very privileged that there's a lot that I get to learn from them. But then what does the IT industry expect? So what do I expect when I what kind of behaviors do I expect? Soft skills, hard skills, technology skills. What is the expectation that we have from IT engineers when they join, right? Let's say in the first 6 months. So I'm going to touch upon that, right? And do feel free to ask questions. I will try and monitor the chat as well. You can ask questions, and let's have a conversation, right? Instead of it being a monologue and I just me talking about. So let's start by the business of information technology, right? So what is information technology? When about 20-25 years ago, right, information technology or IT was something that happened in the back end. Businesses were running, and IT was supporting those businesses, right? And today also predominantly that is what IT does. IT is a support industry, it supports businesses. But the IT is no longer in the back end. It is not something that happens in large offices. It is not something that happens on large mainframe. Today IT is in our hands. Even right now, this conversation that we are having, right, we are struck by a pandemic. The last time we were struck by a pandemic in this world was in 1919, when the influenza pandemic struck. And if you read about it, you will realize that it actually stopped businesses, right? But today that hasn't happened, right? Businesses are continuing, and IT is enabling that. The 4G revolution, the Wi-Fi, the broadband revolution that has happened in the country, and now what we are expecting to see through 5G in the coming days, it is only going to aggravate that. So what is this business of information technology, right? So I mean, this quote, the reason I like this quote is that this quote is going to be relevant in all times to come, right? Businesses today are using IT not just as a support, but as an enabler, right? So I'll give you simple examples, right? I'm sure all of you have used Zomato and Swiggy, right? So what is
Yes, sir.
Zomato and Swiggy's core business? What is its core business? Do they make the food? They don't,
Sir,
right?
to deliver food.
They are providing you a platform, right, which brings the food business closer to the end customer. Think of it this way, right? It's not that we didn't go to restaurants, say 10 years back. We did, right? But it's not that we didn't order food 10 years back. Of course we did, right? We used to call up the restaurant, we used to order. But today, by having a Swiggy, the amount of choice that the end customer has, the amount of variety that the end customer can get. You might not even have heard of restaurants, right? But Swiggy and Zomato allow you to order from these restaurants, right? So it's actually, it is helping the food business grow. It is enabling the food business, right? So information technology and businesses today, tomorrow's world, if I were to say, hey, now let's live in a world without a Swiggy and Zomato, I mean, half of us won't know what to do, right? That's how interwoven technology and business is going to be. Now, this is a little slightly dated data. This is about 2020's data. So I'm sure it would have only grown from here. But if you look at it, it's a $5.2 trillion industry. 5.2 trillion, right? India's GDP last when I checked was of somewhere around 3.2 trillion, right? And this is the size of this industry globally, and it is only going to grow. There is absolutely no way that this is going to ever go down, because our lives are going to be only more and more connected. And once 5G comes in, probably another 2-3 years away, that is just going to revolutionize. And we'll talk about that a little bit as I go ahead. Right? So first thing, I need you guys to know that, hey, this is a huge industry, right? And what does that mean? If it's a huge industry, then tremendous opportunities. Now, what is this industry? What does this industry do? Now, if you look at it, just look at this slide, right? It just tells you that IT is not just about software. It's not just about hardware. It's not just about servers. It's not just about laptops and mobile devices, right? There's a whole lot of activity that is happening in the IT industry, right? So software, of course, is one of them. Devices and infrastructure, what we are using today, right? Your laptops, your connectivity, your broadband, your Wi-Fi, it all comes here. Business services. Now, this is where we are, right? We, in the sense, my organization, Cognizant, and the IT services industry in India, which is what has propelled India into the global stage. That comes here. Emerging tech. Now, this is a huge area, and this is what makes IT grow, right? It is the emerging tech, the amount of investments, the amount of research that is going into emerging technologies today is what is enabling that growth, right? If we have grown into a $5.2 trillion industry and will probably be a $6-7 trillion industry, most of that is going to come from here, right? And then, of course, your telecom services. This is the backbone of the industry, right? So as of today, you probably cannot imagine your life without Wi-Fi, right? It probably doesn't exist, right? There's hardly anything that we are able to do without Wi-Fi today. Wi-Fi is so integral to our day-to-day lives, right? And that's all being enabled by the telecom industry. So all this put together is what comprises of the industry that we are talking about. Now, I'm just going to touch a bit upon, of course, this is not a very comprehensive slide, but I've tried to bring in as many facets of the industry, as many facets of, what are the global opportunities in this industry as I possibly can. But even as I speak today, I probably created this slide deck about 5 months back. I can assure you that even in that 5 months, many things have changed, right? So what do we do? So let's look at it a little bit. Let's double click and deep dive into this, right? So software products, right? Web and mobile apps, infrastructure software, enterprise software, gaming software. I'm sure that you come from a generation where gaming software is pretty much integral part of your life. I'm sure you guys have used it. But probably what you don't know is how big this gaming industry is and how much opportunities the gaming industry actually provides, even in India, right? So there's a lot of activity that happens in the gaming industry, right? And I always, my son is also just getting into college now. We are looking for his admissions, right? So I was kidding with him, so he also likes playing games. So I told him that, hey, you know what? You need to find a job that will allow you to play games as part of your job, right? And he got very excited, right? And he said, yeah, that sounds great, and I want to do that. But let's be clear, this is hard business, right? So while yes, there are huge opportunities as game testing, as a career opportunity, but it's hard business. But yeah, you do get to play games, right? At the end of the day, if that's your passion, that's what excites you, you always have a chance to look at this as a career option. But all said and done, right? What I mean by enterprise software is software that large organizations use to run their businesses, right? Their back-end financial operations, their business operations, it's all run through enterprise software, right? This is what connects a large enterprise, right? Their HR department to their legal department, to their operations, to their marketing department, to their sales department, right? That's all getting connected to the enterprise software divisions. So we build software, right? Let's make it very simple, right? And in the IT industry, we build software, and this is very much well known, right? I'm sure all of you already know that, right? We build software, but what else? We do a lot of engineering and R&D, right? So embedded engineering, right? This is where I'm sure many of you have probably selected subjects around embedded engineering. You have selected subjects around product management. R&D services is a huge play for us, right? R&D services is where uh, we are working with, and again, I'm being very specific about the IT services industry now. So companies like Cognizant, Wipro, TCS, HCL, right? These kind of companies. We partner with companies like you can say Cisco's or the Googles or the Microsofts of the world to actually help them around R&D services, right? Trying to find new ways, new softwares and new ways of using software. Right? So this is another aspect. Project oriented services, right? Consulting, system integration, testing services, infrastructure services. Infrastructure is again a huge play for the Indian IT industry. Now, this is not a very visible piece of work because we don't really, I mean, for end user like me, if I, and again, I'll go to back to my Swiggy and Zomato example. If I'm using Swiggy and Zomato, I'm not really thinking about how my request from my mobile phone is actually reaching the restaurant, right? I'm not thinking about that, but what it is doing is, right, it is going through a mobile tower, it is going into the Zomato's servers, and Zomato probably would have, lines of server rooms, which is, which would be running. There'll be like millions of transactions that would be coming in every second. That all those would be getting processed. It would then be going and hitting again some mobile tower and again going to the actual restaurant, right? This is how my transaction is traversing, but we don't think about that. But at the end of the day, this is what is driving the industry, right? So again, I will really encourage you, just Google on if you can Google on Facebook's, how Facebook manages their servers, and just see the picture of where their server rooms are and how big they are. They are as big as a football field, right? And lines of servers. And you, even if you have to imagine a little bit that how do you actually maintain these kind of servers? For me to maintain my one laptop, it sometimes becomes such a pain. But if I have to maintain a set of servers spread across like a football field, I'm going to need a lot of manpower, and not just manpower, a lot of automation, right? So if you look at again, if you want to Google how Amazon manages its warehouses, again, a very interesting video. See the kind of automation that they have done, right? It's all robotic, right? The request goes into the warehouse. A robot picks it up. The robot knows exactly which aisle it has to go, how high it has to go, which box it has to pick up, okay, what item it has to pick up, and where does it need to go and drop it before it goes into packaging. So all this happens through the infrastructure division. Then IT outsourcing. This is where we come in, right? So while these software products are being built and software has a need, but today a lot of that is happening here in India, and not just in India, also in Philippines, in Vietnam, and a lot of countries are catching on. But still, at the end of the day, India is by far the market leader when it comes to IT outsourcing. And there's a lot of work that happens in India, and we have large teams, which is so my teams basically are doing this, right? Mostly application management, data center management. I just talked about those Facebook data centers, right? You should Google them, right? Because you will get an idea of the scale of operations that we are talking about. And today everything is done in a remote manner, right? So I will have teams sitting in India managing a data center in the US, right? Actually managing servers in the US. Even if it means that I have to change, let's say I have to change a hard drive of a server in US, I can do it from here. I just have to command a robot to do that. It goes, it picks up the new hard drive, goes to the one which is corrupted, picks it up, replaces it. All happens from here. training and support. Now, again, a very large portion of uh, businesses have to train their staff to use new software. And we again play a very big role in that, right? So there's a lot of there's a career that you can build in training and support, especially around training, right? IT, not just enterprise training that we do in for example, in Cognizant, we build training software, and we build training content for our customers, but also IT education and training, right? Because there's a large workforce that has to come in today, and you know how fast and how quickly technologies are changing today. The kind of technologies that I worked on, it probably took a year and a half, 2 years, and a new product came in into the market, or a new language came in. But today, products and languages are coming in, literally by the day. So I would be reading about something today. I would be probably talking to a company to see how I can collaborate with them. And 2 days later, I might come up with, somebody else has come up with a much better product, right? So when that happens, how do you make sure that a large portion of the population, that is even people like you, students who are just coming into the industry, how do we make sure that they are relevant, right? The technology changes so much that the kind of languages, or the kind of products that we used when you got into VIT 4 years back, and what we are using today when you're getting out of VIT, as engineers, is very different. That is the kind of change that's happening, right? So it's a big task for us, and it's a big opportunity, that how do we make this new workforce aligned with what's happening in the industry. BPO, again, uh, not much talked about, but a massive play for India, and a massive opportunity for all of you who are coming out right now. BPO is not just about voice services. It's not just about somebody picking up a phone and talking to you, but it's also about business processing. There's a lot of work that we are doing. Like, for example, how many of you would believe it if I told you that we also recruit doctors, MBBS doctors, MD doctors, right, within Cognizant? And why do we do that? Because there's a lot of work that happens in India in terms of processing medical data, right? Data that is coming out of pharmaceutical companies, data that is coming out of hospitals, analyzing that data, creating inferences from it, diagnosis from it, sending it back. This is happening in India right now as I speak, and in fact, I have got teams who are doing that, right? And this is where the BPO integration, if you recollect the Bill Gates quote, this is where the business integration with IT comes to life, and you can actually see it happening, right? So I've got doctors in my team who are working on medical data as we speak, right? And not just doctors, right? I've got aeronautical engineers. I mean, I personally don't have it, but the company has it, right? Depending on whatever work we do. So it is not just about building software. It is not just about taking care of hardware, but it is also about providing hardcore business services. And that's what happens through BPO. Emerging technology. Now, this is something that I'm sure will excite all of you. And rightly so, right? Rightly so, because I'm right now, as I speak to you, I'm running some projects for one of my customers, and we are building an AR VR solution for them. And the need for this AR VR solution came because of COVID, right? So because COVID came in, and people were not able to get into offices, so there was some restriction put. Obviously, the offices couldn't close down, right? These are businesses, these are plants, right? Manufacturing plants which can't close down, but they had to limit the number of people who come into that plant, right? So that social distancing could be maintained. So now we are working on some AR VR solutions, right? That a person who can probably sit far away, maybe even at home. So just imagine this, right? Let's say that a group of you got a job in, let's say, in a manufacturing plant for Boeing. Okay, I'm just making up an example. Now, you guys have to go and get trained on the machinery that you're going to be operating as part of your job, but you can't go into office. So we are building solutions where you will get trained using AR VR technologies, right? You just wear your AR VR goggles, something like this, right? And you are, and there's a trainer. You can actually get a feel, that you are inside that floor. You can walk around. You can pick up objects. I mean, obviously virtually, not really, but those are the kind of solutions that are getting built, and this is only going to increase, right? AI and robotics. I mean, AI, I don't even have to talk to this generation about AI, but if you haven't, let me just give you a very rudimentary example, right? Take your mobile phone and go to Make My Trip and go to one of these aggregator sites, travel aggregator sites, and start searching for ticket from say Chennai to Delhi, right? Do it some 6-7 times, and then go to your laptop and log into Facebook. What ads do you see? You will see ads of Chennai to Delhi, and it will happen, right? You will actually notice that that happens. How is that happening? Have you ever given this a thought? How is that happening? You were not on your laptop when you did the search. You were on your mobile. You were not even on Facebook on that mobile.
Sir,
But yet,
it can link with
right?
the many such like your Google ID or your IP address or your approximate
Exactly. So what
location.
is running behind? What is running behind is the AI engine, right? Artificial intelligence engine. And these are some softwares that we are building today, right? So I have teams who are actually building these kind of softwares today. Now, I mean, imagine the speed at which this is happening. Not just that, right? I'll give you so many examples. You've got the Alexas of the world, you've got the Google Homes of the world, you've got devices today who are listening to you. Now, it is also scary, of course, one way when you look at it, but you have devices today who are listening to you. And what do they do with this data? Have you ever thought of that? All those searches that you're doing on Google, all those searches that you're doing on aggregator sites, even the food that you're ordering today, if I go back to my Swiggy and Zomato example, what happens to that data? It's a transaction, right? If Tushar Fadnes orders a butter chicken today from some restaurant, that's one transaction. But what happens to the data? The best part of this is it never gets deleted. It's there forever. And there are companies who have huge megalithic AI engines which are scanning through that data and drawing up inferences. And they are drawing up profiles. They now know what does Tushar like, what time does he order, right? When does he order? What kind of hobbies does he have? Is the order that he's placing linked in any which way to the work that he is doing, right? And inferences that you can't even imagine. And that's what is happening in the AI world today. And it's only going to get bigger. Of course, there are security concerns around this. There is a lot of talk happening from an ethical side on, is this something that should be allowed? But trust me, you can't stop this, right? This is where the industry is going. And why am I talking to you about this? This is an area where you can build a career today. And this is an area where we are getting a lot of inquiries from customer, a lot of new work that is happening in these 4 areas.
Sir?
Robotics, IoT,
Sir,
data analytics, and social. Yeah, go on.
sir, I have a question. Sir, you are saying about Zomato and Swiggy. So, sir, why they don't think about international collaboration and why they are not concentrating on giving food of other countries to on each and other countries with drone or anything else like AI using softwares?
Okay, first and foremost, to answer your question, see, it's a business strategy that they'll have, right? Which countries do they want to operate in? How big is the market? How tech savvy is the country? I mean, you will be surprised to know, if I ask you today, which is by far the most tech savvy country in the world, what would you say?
US.
What do you think?
India.
India.
It is.
India.
I would say that, right? Because trust me, I'll give you simple examples, right? Payments. How do you make payments in India today? How many of you 15 years back, you probably used cash, maybe credit cards? What do you do today?
So
You look at how quickly the payments industry has picked up. And trust me, I've traveled so much. The kind of payment advances that is happening in India, countries like US and Europe are way behind. I mean, and when I say way behind, I say it with a lot of emphasis, right? Way behind. They have got probably a decade to catch up with us, right? Now, what does that mean? That doesn't mean that, hey, they don't have great technology, only we have. It just means that we as a nation are much faster in adopting a new technology. So tomorrow, if a new product comes into the market, Indians across the country will adopt it at a rate which is much faster than what you will see in the West, right? But that doesn't mean that it will be easy for companies like Zomato or Swiggy to just quickly enter. There's a lot of legality around it. There's a lot of you also have to think of finances. You have to think of competition. You have to think of how big the market is, right? Today, for example, Swiggy is so widely used in India. It's not that you don't have these kind of options in the US, but are they as widely used as they are in India? Probably, perhaps not. Right. So if they are not going to be that widely used, and if the market doesn't exist, then does it make sense to invest? Second thing,
But
your
sir,
second part of your question is why can't we have deliveries which happen across the world? Of course we can. But think about it this way. Today, for a company like a Swiggy, if it has to provide food to you, it is not just about the app. It is not that I just build an app and I give it to a user. It is also about the supply chain logistics behind it, right? The workforce that you have to create, the delivery boys that you need, the infrastructure, will they drive cars? Will they drive scooters? How long does it take?
Sir,
If, for
from
example, if I
drone,
order food, no, I'll come to drones as well. I'll come to drones, right? If I order food
okay,
today, when the food reaches you, if it is ice cold, will you like it? You will never order from them again, right? So they have to think of various means and mechanisms, right? In terms of how the supply chain logistics work. Before I come to drone, I'll give you one example, right? So when you think of a Swiggy or you think of a Zomato, you also think about the level of complexity operations that they are running, right? So it is easy for us to say, hey, you know what, I want to order food, let's say from Vellore, and get it delivered to Chennai. Very good thought. But is there technology available today that can, first and foremost, when a person in Chennai orders food, let's say he orders it from Vellore, there's a very, very good restaurant in Vellore and the guy in Chennai wants that food. Question is, how long is that guy going to wait? Will he order food in the morning for evening? No, he's going to order food somewhere around 7 o'clock for having a dinner at 8 o'clock. So he's not going to wait more than 60 minutes. Is there supply chain logistics available today that can deliver food at that pace to him? Perhaps not, right? Because even drones, even if you use drones, so you know that Amazon is trying so much, they're doing a lot of experimentation in trying to use drones to deliver your parcels, right? They are to some extent, they have been successful in trying out some experiments, and at some point of time, I'm sure that will happen. May I know your name? Hello.
yes, my name is Idris Sefi. Sir, my question was that in future, if it can happen that in India we are sitting and we can eat food of USA and China like that.
It can happen provided there is a supply chain logistics function that allows you to do that, right? You've got drones that can travel that distance in 60 minutes. Yes, why not? See, again, the point I'm making is this is an emerging area, right? But even for this emerging area to work, there is a lot of advancements that will have to happen. If I just go back a little in these areas, right? There's a lot of and these areas. You need to see, it is easy to say that, I will order food in US and it will come to India. But today, travel between US and India can take you anything from 16 to 24 hours, right?
So,
you can still order food. If you are one of those rich guys, you have a plane of your own, you can still say, you know what, I feel like having a New York pizza, I'll go and order. It'll take me 16 hours to get it here. But that's not something that an average man is going to do tomorrow, right?
so
And maybe it will happen.
So won't it also compromise security? So we would have to look about that.
Exactly. So that is what I'm saying. There's a lot of legality behind all these things. Running a business operation is not just about creating an app and giving it to a user. I can do that today. I can create an app and give it to a guy in South Korea. But if that guy in South Korea orders something, I also love to think of, one, how do I deliver it to that guy? Two, what are my taxations? Right? Do I pay a tax in South Korea? Do I pay it in India? Right? There's a whole lot of legality behind any business. Right? IT is, as I said, always remember, IT is the enabler. IT will help you, but IT is not the business. The business of food delivery is different from IT. But we'll leave it at that for now. But look, first and foremost, let's not say that anything is impossible. Today it is difficult. Let's put it that way. It is difficult. It is impractical. But in tomorrow's world, if the technology catches up, it will not be so difficult, right? And it will not be so impossible. Because somebody, if our parents were told that, hey, you know what? In the future, you are going to have a device in your hand and you will be able to look at your son who's in the US studying and you will be able to talk to him. They probably may not have believed you, but today it's a reality, right? So this area is where there's a lot of research happening. There's a lot of potential why not questions being asked, right? And you should always ask this question, why not, right? So if Ibris, you ask me a question, and the answer is why not? Of course, it can happen, but somebody will have to work on the logistics part behind it. Somebody will have to work on simplifying the legality behind it. Somebody will have to work on creating contracts behind it. And when all that happens and it works together, yes, in the future, it might happen. Okay. And this is the important part here, right? For all this to work, this also has to keep pace with it. You will need to have hardware solutions that are complementing your ideas, right? So drones, for example, today, if I ask you, hey, today, do you have a reliable drone solution that can pick up a parcel from Vellore and deliver it to pinpoint to one particular person in one particular location in Chennai?
No, sir.
Probably the answer to that is yes, but those are industrial military drones, and you and I can't afford that, right? But tomorrow, that technology may become so simplified. So for example, in 50 years back, computers were only used by whom? They were used by military organizations. They were used by large government organizations. Today, if I ask you who uses computer, everybody, literally everybody. For example, I'm sure all of you do that as well. I go and buy vegetable, right? Half kilo bindi from from a stall on the road. And how do I pay him? I pay him using Paytm, right? So imagine how quickly the technology has got adopted, but the hardware has to catch up. The mobile devices have to become more and more powerful, and they are. The phone that I bought last time has more memory than my laptop, and this is only going to become much and much faster. And when 5G comes in another 3-4 years later, your mobile devices will also have to be as quick. So it is very easy to say that, hey, you can download. 5G is going to allow you to download a 1 GB movie. They are claiming that somewhere like 3.6 seconds. Imagine 1 GB download in 3.6 seconds. But your hardware will also have to support that, right? You will need a hardware which is going to write that much data that it is reading from a cloud to your mobile device, right? So, but it'll happen, right? So maybe your idea, Ibris, if you believe that this is a great idea, you should probably keep formulating it in your mind and keep looking out for supporting hardware technologies in the market. And if you see it happening, you have a business going.
Okay,
Right.
sir.
So now let me, good question. Thanks for that, Ibris. So
Thank you, sir.
let's talk about my industry, right? Which is the IT services industry, which is companies, as I said, like Cognizant, Wipro, TCS. Right? So we do all this, but how do we do it? Right? And what does this mean for you, a young engineer who's coming out of college today? What does it mean for you, right? So I'm going to touch upon how we are structured as a company, right? And most of the IT companies in India are structured in some form or the other like this. Okay. What happened? Okay. Right. So first and foremost, yeah, let's first understand that whom do we service, right? Why does IT exist? Can IT exist on its own without the core businesses being there? The answer is probably yes, but in a very, very limited way. IT today exists because there are core businesses in the market, right? There is banking, there is life sciences, pharmaceuticals, there's retail, there's manufacturing. I'm sure you understand all of this, right? Banking, I think all of you know. Pharmaceuticals, all of you know pharma companies who make drugs, right? Your life-saving drugs. Retail is your large like your Reliance Retail or your home stores that you go to, right? Manufacturing is manufacturing, right? People, companies that make automobiles and hardware products and tires and all those things, right? And there are a lot more. I've just taken a very small sample of it. But these are the companies who are running businesses today, right? This is what we consume as a user on a day-to-day basis. We consume this on a daily basis. Just these four that I talked about. Trust me when I tell you this, when you get up in the morning till you go to sleep, you're going to touch one of these industries at least once in your day, every day of your life, right? You will be making payments every day. You're touching a bank. You will be probably taking some medicine, some vitamin capsules. You're touching a pharma industry. You will be going out and buying something. You'll be buying a product. Even if you're going to your local kirana store and maybe buying a bread, you have touched retail. And manufacturing, the very fact that you are sitting today and using your computer, you have touched manufacturing, right? So these are the businesses that run in the market. And what IT does, IT services these businesses, IT enables these businesses, IT makes these businesses reach a larger audience, IT makes these businesses run faster, right? When I was a child, I remember that every Saturday, literally every Saturday, I used to go with my dad to the bank. And what did my dad do there? He used to either deposit some money or he used to withdraw some money. And to withdraw money, what did he do? He had to fill out a form. He used to fill out a form, give it to a counter. Then there used to be a small waiting area. He used to sit there. Then there used to be a token number, token number 22. Then we used to go to one counter and that guy used to count cash, give it to my dad. We used to come out and go to the market and buy things. That was the cycle. I haven't been to a bank. Literally, I have not been inside a bank for the last 15 years at least. And I'm sure none of you have probably ever gone inside a bank. In fact, banks have also stopped having branches now, right? So banks like Citibank, for example, they perhaps have one branch in the entire city. And that also people go there when they want to get some documentation done, right? So what has happened? The way bank used to run 20, 25 years ago and the way a bank runs today is different. But what is that different? That difference is IT. That's where IT came in, right? So let's understand these simple concepts first, that, hey, these are the core businesses and IT enables them. Now, how do we do it, right? So we have our technology horizontal. So in our company, we have got verticals, what we call as verticals, which is the businesses that or the groups that actually talk to banks, that talk to pharma companies and get business from them. And that's where I come in. So I am part of life sciences in Cognizant. And we've got technology horizontals, right? Now, what is technology horizontals? These are groups which specialize in a technology. So analytics, I'm sure all of you will understand analytics today. Analytics is a group which works on all the technologies in the market today, which aid work in analytics. Same for testing, same for infrastructure. Right? Now, why am I showing you this? What it means is when you join a company like Cognizant or a Wipro or a TCS or a HCL, it's a 95% chance that you're going to join one of these technology verticals, right? Because you guys are coming out of college, you are technical guys, right? The expectation from you will be that you will be part of technology verticals, but there'll be a small portion of you who will also be part of the verticals. Now we will come a little bit ahead in the next slide on what is the difference, but so far just leave it at that, right? Now, how do we run projects, right? I'm sure you have all heard from either from your, your seniors or your relatives that we do a lot of projects, right? Okay, before that. So while this company is running, right, while we have our technology-led horizontals and our verticals, you have to always remember that there is a big support function that allows a company to work, right? The quality function, the finance, the marketing, the admin, the staffing. If I take your example, if you have to start a company today that is delivering food pan-India. Sorry?
No, sir, it's audible.
Hello?
Please carry on. No,
Audible.
Yeah.
Yes, audible.
Okay. So if you have to start a company today, it is not just about doing work in the technology area. You will also have to figure out how this is going to work. How will you get money to run your business? Right? How will you take payments from your customer? How will you make payments to your vendor? How will you market your product? Right? You have a great idea. You have a fantastic idea, but the world has to know about it, right? Before they start using it. How will you market it? When you get staff to come and work for you, right? How will you actually attract the best talent into your company? And once the talent comes into your company, how will you retain them? How will you train them? So you'll have to think of all these. So there's a big support function that enables our companies like us to work. Now, but when you come into the industry, you are going to be somewhere here, right? In the technology side. That's where most of, including me, when I joined the industry, it was on the technology side, right? And then there'll be projects, right? So for example, I may be doing a project in analytics for a bank, or I may be doing a project for life sciences, but it is across analytics, testing and BPO, right? So my customer is telling me that, hey, you build me a nice product, which will do some XYZ feature, it'll have XYZ features. You test it for me, make sure it works fine, and then you only run it. You only bring the doctors, the engineers, or whatever it is required. You only run it, and I will pay you for this entire operation, right? So that could be a project. Same way, it could be across multiple domains, right? I'm just trying to show you that you are going to be part of the technology side. You're going to be part of one of these projects, right? So that's the start. That's how you'll start, and then you will grow. And I'll come to that part as well, right? So this is just to give you an idea of how we operate as an industry, as a company. Okay.
Sir,
But all
doubt,
said and
sir.
done. Sorry.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, in the previous slide, when a company manufactures a product for any service or a project, so then that production comes under verticals or horizontals.
No, I'll explain, right? So let's take this manufacturing example. Let's say there's a company that makes cars. Okay. Take a simple,
Sir, you said about investment. So, sir, in my example, sir, can I do, sir, can I do that in Zomato, there are many hotels and restaurants. So, sir, we can take to advertise them, and we can take investment from them so that they would be advertised internationally. So, sir, we will get investment also, and they will also get benefit.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Who asked me that question about manufacturing? Okay, all right. So let me very quickly answer that. Right. See, when you come into manufacturing, let's say there's a company that manufactures car. How will you manufacture a car? Think about it. Right. Just close your eyes. Think about how will you manufacture a car. You will need some raw materials. Right. You will need steel. You need paints. Right. I'm just taking some you will need rubber. Right. These are all raw materials that will have to come in. Those raw materials will have to then be converted into parts, right? So using rubber, you will probably make tires. Using steel, you will probably make the chassis of the car, right? You will make an engine, you will make steering, you will make wheels, right? These are the parts. Then once all that is done, you will assemble these parts in an assembly line. Once all this is done, you will put in the, you will put in the music system, the electrical, wiring, windows, glass. Then you will send it for painting. Once the painting and everything has happened, you will send it for testing to make sure that it starts correctly, it runs correctly, it steers correctly, right? Once the testing is done, then the car is ready to be shipped to a showroom. And once it goes to a showroom, customers like you and me will go and buy it, right? This is the entire life cycle. Now, this entire life cycle, if you have to run it, so if Tushar Fadnis today goes and books a car in a showroom, a plant in Chennai will have to know that there is a Tushar Fadnis who has booked a car in Pune, and the plant in Chennai is going to manufacture that car. So you know that Chennai is an automobile hub, right, for India. Pune and Chennai are the two automobile hubs, and now Gurgaon probably is coming up as the third place. But anyway, that being said, now how will this happen, right? This entire operation. So the plant in Chennai needs to know how much steel it has to order, how much rubber it has to order, and all the parts that it needs, right? While it's not that simple, but I'm just trying to make it as simple as I possibly can. All this entire operation, right from Tushar Fadnis placing an order to Tushar Fadnis getting a delivery of his car, there is an IT enterprise software that is running in the background, which is keeping track of when did Tushar order, what model, what make, what model, right? What features, extra features has he asked for, right? Has he made any customization? Which color of the car has he ordered? All that information has to go from the showroom to the plant. The plant has to manufacture it. The entire supply chain logistics, putting the car into a truck, sending it to the showroom in Pune. While it is doing that, paying whatever taxation, excise duties along the way, government rules have to be adhered to. The car comes into the showroom, Tushar Fadnis goes and picks up the car, right? This entire operation, if I have to run seamlessly, there is a huge IT effort that goes behind it. And that is the IT effort where we run projects. And again, there's a lot of reading that you will have to do to get yourself acquainted. And when you come into the industry, depending on which project you join, you will automatically start learning the nuances, right? If I have to write today, for example, we write a big, huge software for running these operations, right? We are doing it today as I speak to you. And it is complex, right? Sometimes it takes us almost 1 to 1.5 years to complete one project. That's how, and it's not just one person. There's like 150 member team working for 18 months before the software goes live, right? That's how complex some of these softwares can get. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. There was one more question. I stopped you and I was answering who was that? Okay, all right, I'll move on then. So now let's go see, till here I was talking about the industry. Now I want to spend some time talking about you, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have to be successful, remember one thing, only you are going to make yourself successful. Your college is only aiding that. It is helping you be successful, right? It is giving you the tools, it is giving you the education, it is giving you a head start, right? And VIT is a very, very popular institute. It's giving you that head start to get into the industry. But your career is not your college's responsibility. Your career is not your parents' responsibility. It is not your boss's responsibility. It's not your company's responsibility. It is your responsibility, right? And what does that mean? Why? And I say this to every engineer who joins my group, right? Because I really want you to start thinking now that when you come out of, see, till you were in college, till the time a person comes out of college, there is always someone who is thinking for your benefit, right? While we are children, when we are in school, It's our parents, right? They are thinking for our benefit. They are guiding us. They are in fact, in school, they are telling us, right? They are making decisions for us. When you come into a college, maybe the college is not making decisions for you, but it is guiding you, right? It is telling you what could be the right decision, what could be the wrong decision, how this decision will help you, how some other decision will help you. Once you come out of college, guys, you're on your own. There's nobody going to come and take care of your career. So you will have to do that. Now, what does that mean? Let's first understand how do you grow, right, in an IT industry. Now, again, I made it very simple. It is not really that simple, but I just wanted to drive home the point, right? So when you come in, you're a trainee, right? I think all of us know that, right? So for example, I joined around 24 years earlier. I still remember the training days, best days of my life, no doubt on that. But you join as a trainee engineer. And for the first 3 years, I tell my people that, hey, you are actually learning through this whole thing. You know, the learning never stops. But for the first 3 years, you are like a sponge, right? You're just absorbing whatever is coming your way. You may be in any one of these areas. But you are learning. So if you join a life sciences project, for example, and you're working for a drug manufacturing company, let's say a Novartis or a Pfizer or a Bharat Biotech, right? You will be learning about their business. You'll be learning about how pharmaceutical industries work, right? There's a lot of absorption that has to happen. You have to learn. As you grow, and these are some of the roles, right? These are not just the roles. In fact, you will see a slide where you'll see some really, fundu roles, if I were to put it this way. But these are some of the roles that you're going to play. You'll grow as a developer, right? Now, you can either be a software analyst, a quality analyst, or a test engineer, right? These are just some roles that I have called out. Then somewhere around the line, 6 to 10 years, you grow as a tech lead, right? Or a project lead. Now, you have a small team, right? So there are people here who have just joined, who come and join your team. So now your role changes a bit, right? So till here, you were actually doing the job. Now you're slowly moving into an area where you're getting job done. Okay. Then you grow into a project manager layer, right? So where the expectation from you will be, see, now again, you're 100% technical work, technology. This is technology work. Here, there's a bit of mentoring that you will have to do to your team. There's a bit of planning that you'll have to do. When you come here, your work is not just technical, but you have now slowly moved into finance. You have moved into contracting, right, which is legal, right? You're not only connected with technology, but you also start getting connected to the business, right? You have to actually create contracts. You have to actually take care of your budgets, right? Your project will have a budget, like say, $100,000. You have to complete this project. So how do I make sure that I don't spend more money than $100,000? And within that $100,000 comes everything, right? Salaries of all these people, their travel expenses, their hardware expenses, everything has to be managed within that. So now you slowly start moving from technology to management. Then as you grow, you get into, now this is where you start getting into, now you will see one role here, right? The technical architect, the enterprise architect. So there are people even at 18, 20 years experience who are not managing projects, right? Who are technical architects. They are still connected with technology. Now, what are these guys doing? What is the difference between a delivery manager and enterprise architect? A delivery manager is running a business, right? He has, like I showed you some projects there. He has probably maybe 30, 40 different projects running. Each project has a project manager. And that guy is running that project. This guy is running the business operation. The enterprise architect is doing a completely different role, right? He's talking to the customers and guiding them on how their entire IT infrastructure has to work, right? Where should they have their data centers? How big should the data centers be? What kind of bandwidth will they require to communicate between, let's say, their sales office and their plant? So he's doing the design and the consulting for all that, right? So this is a typical role that you will grow into. And then you get into the senior management roles, right? Where you're a group head, you're a delivery partner, client partner. So now you're more responsible for running a IT business rather than actually doing the coding yourself, right? So this is a very typical growth path. And one good thing about this industry is that you don't have to, or not that all of you are going to become managers. Some of you will remain in the technology line. You will still be architects, right? Very, very senior architects. You will be the people who will actually be designing. So Ibris's question, I'm going to go back to, you will probably be one of those guys who's designing the entire architecture that is required for say delivering food from Vellore to Chennai, right? How many towers, what kind of infrastructure, will there be a drone, what will be the speed, what will be the efficiency, all those calculations. creating a plan, all that will be done by the architecture group, right? So you can either grow into the management cadre or you can grow into the technology cadre, and that's a choice you have, and that's a choice you start making somewhere here, right? Around 10 years experiences when you start making those choices. But till then, the point I want to draw is you will be connected with technology, right? So you have to be strong in in whatever technical field that you get into, and you have to learn and you have to adopt and you have to expand your horizon, right? You cannot just be limited. So if you, let's say you start as a R or a Python developer today, right? Or tomorrow when you get into the industry, if you think that you are going to use R and Python and grow till here, it's never going to happen, because R and Python, by the time you come to this area, some other language, some other technology would have come and overshadowed R and Python. So every point of time you will be learning. And even today, for example, even today, I do a lot of training on my own, right? So there's a lot of training that my company provides me, and this is technical training, right? I'm actually learning some new technology. And always remember that your learning cannot stop, right? Just because you have come out of college doesn't mean that, now I've learned everything. You will be learning from now, forever. Even when you retire, you will have to learn new technologies to even use the products. Like I see my grandmothers, I'm sure your grandmothers and grandfathers, you're seeing that even today they are learning how to operate a mobile phone, right? They are all retired, but so the learning cannot stop, right? You be in that learning mode, your growth is going to be much faster. I think this is just a slide. We've already talked a lot about this. Digital is something is big, right? And you will hear this word. I'm sure in your college also you would have probably heard this word so much that it's now become like a cliche, right? But the fact of the matter is, what does digital do? Now, this is an interesting slide, right? I really want you to start thinking about this. What do I mean by old ways won't open new doors? See, these are some roles that we saw that got added in 2019. So 2018, or at least for 2016, I'll say for sure, these roles didn't exist in the industry. There was some experimental work that was happening somewhere in the corner, but these were not mainstream roles. So you would never have heard a Cognizant going to the market in 2016 or 2015 and saying, I'm hiring an AR/VR engineer or I'm hiring a cloud engineer. But today, this is a mainstream role. There are thousands of cloud engineers and thousands of data scientists that we are hiring or we are grooming by the day, right? Just look at the time span, right? We are talking of what, 4 to 5 years. These are the new roles that have come into the industry. I'm sure you would have heard a role called CIO, right? CEO, Chief Executive Officer. A CEO had a person called CIO who used to run the entire IT enterprise for any company, right? So if you have a company like, let's say, Tata Chemicals, I'm just taking an example again, or Tata Motors, right? It will have a CEO who will be the big boss, right? Who is actually running the entire business for Tata Motors. But below that guy, there'll be a guy called a CIO, Chief Information Officer. Now, this guy is making sure that the IT that is required for running Tata Motors operation is going fine. Today, that role doesn't exist. I mean, most of the companies are moving away and they have started calling them Chief Digital Officers, right? Because the acceptance now is that you should not only have IT, but your IT has to be the most current, the most recent, right? And that's where the term digital comes in, right? Your ability to reach your end customers has to be quick, fast, efficient, right? And accurate, right? So the roles are changing, right? Now, what does that mean? So you guys are coming out of college, right? This is what, 2021. And see, we did some study, right? We did some study to figure out that, hey, what could be the roles of the future? And I really want you to look at this slide, right? I hope you are able to read, because this is slightly small font. Now, this is what we see, right? That some of the roles in the future are going to be way different from today's roles. Somebody a little while back asked me a question on security, right? That won't security be a problem if I were to run a cross-country business? And you are right, and she was absolutely right. Security is a major concern. Now look at this role, data detective. How does this role sound to you, right? That 6 years down the line, maybe one of or a few of you are going to say, hey, what do you do? You say, I'm a data detective, right? Sounds fancy, right? Sounds good. But question that is I mean, look, I can call any role data detective. The fact is that this is going to be a mainstream role. And why is this becoming a mainstream role? Because of the security concerns. Because of the security concerns, there will be people who will be focusing on data forensics. If I'm not wrong, your college also has a branch in that, right? In digital forensics. Now, these are roles that are going to come up. So look at some of these roles, right? And some of these roles are very, very interesting. Chief Trust Officer. Have you heard of this term today? Chief Trust Officer. Like, for example, if I had asked somebody, Chief Digital Officer 10 years back, they would have said, no, nothing like this exists. Today also, you might say, hey, nothing. What is this Chief Trust Officer? There's nothing like that. But tomorrow, the intricacies of running business across cultures, right? Today also we are running business, but tomorrow that paradigm of business is going to change so much, right? And if I go back to that example, I just love that question that Ibris asked, right? And I just love the way he's thinking. If I were to deliver food across different cultures, right? If I'm delivering food from Japan to India, India to South Korea, one aspect that is going to stay key is that how do you build trust between these two cultures, right? And that's where roles like this will become so important for companies, and they are going to do this. Just read some of this. I'm not going to go through all of these, but the point, what is the point that we are trying to make here? The point is that, hey, your industry is going to change so fast. It is going to create new avenues of working. It is going to create newer and newer opportunities. And companies like ours will have to gear up for that. Like, I cannot wait for 5 years till a role called data detective becomes a very prominent role and then start looking for those guys. No, I will have to start working today. I'll have to take my security teams, talk to them, ask them that question, start building. How do I train people into becoming a data detective? How do I train people in becoming a genetic diversity officer, augmented reality journey builder? How do I train people to do that? What kind of technologies will the market offer to me for me to go and offer a service to my customer? Augmented reality. I mean, the best use of augmented reality really that I have done personally is I have played games, right? I mean, I have that one of those goggles and my son plays those games and I play those games with him. That's about the best we have done. But that's not the future. The future is that this is going to become mainstream. This is going to become mainstream. This is how you're going to learn how to drive cars. This is how you're going to learn how to drive planes. This is how you're going to learn how to operate machines in industries, right? Augmented reality is going to become mainstream. Quantum machine. Now, quantum machine, I'm sure quantum computing, you guys would have probably either learned in your college in some form or the other, or you would have read about it, right? When quantum computing becomes mainstream, what does this do for the industry? What does this do for people like me? If I have to run a business with a pharmaceutical company, how can a pharmaceutical company make use of this, right? So the point we are making here is that this industry is not just going to grow. It's not only going to go from 5.2 to 7 trillion. It's also going to change, and it's going to change at a very, very rapid pace. And what does this mean for you? Because again, I said, right, this section is about who? This section is about
now, while we're discussing the future of developers in information technology, could you comment on the rise of artificial intelligence developing programs like GitHub's Copilot or OpenGPT, displaying where computers are capable of creating extensive programs with minimal input from the programmers? So do you think in the future there'll be less of developers and more of human supervisors who oversee or coordinate with machines developing most of the boilerplate code and the big...
Okay. Again, may I know your name again?
My name is Christo.
It's already going on that the machine is generating programs. Just we need to write some basic code, and automatically the code is generated by the GitHub bot. Recently it has launched, so it is automatically done.
Okay, so let me answer this question in two ways, right? First and foremost is if you are looking at writing code, right? In today's world, even in what we are doing today, first and foremost, let's accept that writing code is not going to go away. It will still be there, right? But we are still talking about bots that will come, or or software that will come and it will be able to write code for you. At least if not the whole code, it will be able to give you snippets of code which you can use. That's also happening today. I'll give you a simple example. See, I think what I love to do is I like to simplify a complex problem, right? While all this sounds fancy, remember something that, and I'm a firm believer of this, right? Human ingenuity is never ever going to be replaced by an AI. It's not going to happen, right? It's always a human who's going to go and say that, hey, if today, let's say I'm living in a world where artificial intelligence rules, right? It is doing absolutely everything for me. All I'm doing is getting up in the morning and exercising and going to sleep and watching TV. Even then, there will be a human who's going to ask a question, what next? What after this? What else can I do better? Right? So human ingenuity doesn't go away. Let's keep that as a driving mantra. So it's always us. Second is, look, writing code is not just the end objective of an artificial intelligence. Right? Today, for example, I'll give you a simple example. What am I using? Am I using artificial intelligence today? I am. What am I doing with it? Right? So what I'm trying to do today, we are trying to build a code. Right? What will this code do? That code, let's take simple example again. Let's say I have a machine. Right? Let's talk about that a machine is. Okay, let me take a real life example, right? Let's say there's a COVID vaccines, right? COVID vaccines today, what do COVID vaccines do? There are a few companies who make these COVID vaccines, and these COVID vaccines have to be stored in a refrigerated environment, and it has to be transported in a refrigerated environment. So when I make it, it has to be made in a refrigerated environment. When I store it, it has to be refrigerated environment. When I transport it, move it across the country, it has to be in a refrigerated environment. When I get it to my end, my end substation where I'm actually going to administer the dose to a human patient, it has to be in a refrigerated environment. The only time it comes out of a refrigerated environment is when, for two places, when I'm moving from warehouse to the truck to the substation, and finally when it is actually going into my body. Correct? Now imagine this, right? In this whole supply chain, I need to know that this medicine has always been in the tolerance band. It has always been within that tolerance band of whatever it could be. Right? Some of the drugs are stored at minus 17 degrees. Some of them are stored at 3 degrees, whatever it may be. Let's say I'm storing a drug at minus 7. So it can only be between minus 16 and minus 18. If it even for a minute period, if it goes beyond minus 18, that batch is considered as lost. If it goes below minus 16, the batch is considered as lost. Now it has to always stay within that range. Now, today we all of us know that we have the supply chain logistics to do this. It's available today, right? It's even available in India to some extent, but largely in the West, it is beautifully available. But what am I using AI for? I'm using, now what my guys are trying to do is they're trying to put in software which can predict that a machine or a truck is going to malfunction. Now think about this for a moment, right? I'm not saying that I'm going to intimate an engineer if it malfunctions. I'm saying we are trying to predict which machine or which truck or which warehouse or which refrigerator is actually going to malfunction in the future, in the near future, in the next 20 minutes. How is this being done? Complex algorithms are being written, data is being crunched. So data for the last maybe 15 years of how a refrigerator or a refrigerated truck malfunctions is being captured. Inferences are being drawn from it. There are a lot of AI modules that we are writing because humans can't draw that much inference, right? So if I give you an Excel sheet, a simple example with 200 rows, you will be beautifully be able to draw lots of inferences for me, right? If I give you with 2,000, you will be able to do it. 20,000, you will be able to do it, but it will be slightly tough. 200,000, you might struggle. 2 million, your Excel won't even work. You will need a better software for that, right? 20 million, 2 billion, 20 billion, 2 trillion, then I'm going into areas where it is absolutely impossible for a human being to draw any meaningful inference. And this is where the AI engine comes in. Now, AI engines are able to churn this data and give you inferences, mind-boggling inferences, which a human being would never, ever have been able to guess. They would have been able to do it. Like if you had put maybe a human being for 1 million years to do it, they would have come up with the same inference, but just that AI engine is doing it faster. Right? So these are the kind of problems that they are trying to solve by AI. So writing code is the simplest part of it. Today, for example, if I have to write a code, and let me take an area which I have never ever worked upon, right? So let's say I want to write a code on how to calculate the efficiency of a space engine. I have never worked on that. I don't know how many of you have, right? This is not my area at all. But if I have to write a code today for this, do you think I'll have to write it from scratch? No. I can go to Python libraries. I'm sure there would be somebody who has written some portion of this code. I just have to take this and make it work for my business scenario. Right? There are automated software that are available which will help you create snippets of code. So if I want to write a code on, let's take another problem, right? On let's say, how do I measure the efficiency of a medical operation? Now, have I done this? No. But there are snippets that are available. You just have to take 10, 15 snippets, and there are software which will do that for you also. You even don't have to do that, but you will still have to bring this together, guys, right? There is a lot of, so AI, for me, AI is not just about how do I create new code, but AI is really about how do I draw inferences from a large amount of data. That is the real AI, right? Artificial intelligence actually at the bottom is data analysis. And I think that's very important for all of us to know. Artificial intelligence at the bottom is data analysis. The more data I have, the more inferences I can draw. And if more inferences I can draw, the more automated I can make my world. So I don't know if I have truly answered all aspects of your question, but the point I'm trying to make is that what you said is already happening. In fact, the amount of time it took me to write a COBOL program 25 years ago, that same program, one of you can probably write in 10 minutes today. Right? And why is that happening? Because you're not reinventing the world. You're not writing the whole thing line by line, right? The software is giving you blocks which are ready-made. You are only configuring it, right? That's the easy part, but I want you to look beyond that, right? That's not what AI is going to do. AI is going to actually churn. You know how much data is getting generated today, every minute as we speak, every second as we speak. Just think about it. Where is all that data going? Facebook, Twitter, you know, you guys, I'm sure all of you are on Facebook, right? You are putting pictures today, for example, you know, your Facebook engine. Have you seen this in your life? I'm sure you would have, right? That you put a picture on Facebook, and suddenly Facebook starts giving you, you know, hey, is this Tushar? Hey, you know, is this Ravi? Hey, is this Ram? It is giving you, you know, it is giving you suggestions, right? Have you seen that happening? How is it doing it?
AI, sir.
Have you ever thought how is
AI,
it doing
sir.
it? AI, yeah, AI is the right answer, but how?
So
Big data.
when we continuously upload the pictures, it just identifies that if there is a repetition in the face or something. So we have already trained that machine in such a way that it detects the face and it detects some parts, so that it makes some similarities with the current picture and all the past pictures. So it predicts us that how is this that.
It tracks the pattern.
Yeah.
Excellent answers, guys, right? I'm not denying you are right, you're bang on target. But again, I'm asking you, right? This is the business explanation. This is how I would explain it to a business user. But in reality, you know what is on the ground? Your picture. I'm sure by now all of you know it, right? A picture is just a set of numbers.
Science and data analysis, you know.
Exactly, right? A picture is just a number. It's a set of numbers.
Yes, sir.
Right? One picture is a set of hundreds and thousands of numbers. Hundreds and thousands of pictures that you and your group, I'm just talking of 10, 15 of you have put in. There are millions and billions of users of Facebook. Imagine the amount of data that is getting crunched, right? If an AI engine has to accurately predict that the picture that somebody has put in on their Facebook page is of Tushar, imagine how many links it has to make, how many permutation combinations it has to run. There are, how many pictures are there with Facebook today? Perhaps in billions, maybe in trillions, who knows?
Yes.
Right? How is that happening so fast? Is it that you put a picture and then you wait for 2 weeks and then the Facebook comes and tells you, hey, looks like this is Tushar? No. The minute you put the picture, it is giving you a suggestion. Hey, is this Tushar? How is that transaction happening? How is the data crunching happening?
Sir, there are data.
That to me is the most fascinating part. Right? That to me, your laptop, for example, the processing power that your laptop has and the processing power that is required to do what I am talking about is mind-bogglingly different, right? So the point I'm making, again, I mean, these are just scale. I just get fascinated by this, so I just keep talking about it. But the reality, see, you guys are all giving me the right answers, right? But it's easier said than done, guys, right? If I have to write an algorithm that does that, you know, Facebook would have probably put in maybe 400-500 engineers for the last 8-9 years to reach the level of sophistication that they have today. Google has done that with, like, I don't know, maybe 20-30,000 engineers, you know, churning that and making that code better and better over the last 10-15 years before they have got to where they are today. The complexity of this operation is so high, but the end use is so fantastic and it is so quick. You know, it happens in a matter of a few seconds. But what has gone behind that, right, to write that AI engine? And that, guys, the point I'm making, my final point on this topic is that's human ingenuity. That's not AI. AI is only going to aid us. So I am not a firm believer that you will have a transformer type robot who will come and will do everything. Nothing like that is going to happen. It's always going to be one human being who's going to ask that, hey, if 150 million trillion operations are happening today, how do I make that one more operation happen? And that is going to drive that future growth for AI. Right? So for me, as the roles grow, yeah, jobs will change, right? But jobs won't go. I mean, there's a lot of talk I hear. I mean, I personally go and give a lot of talks. I mean, people tell me, what, the job will go. There will not be a developer job. I don't think that's going to happen. The job will change. How I wrote code in 1990s of how you write code in 2020, in 2021, it's going to be different on how you write code in 2031. It's different. It doesn't go away. It will still be there. You will have a different job to play, right? Today, for example, in my time, I use relational databases to actually create enterprise software, right? Today, you guys, when you come out of college, now that relational database has collected so much data over the last 20 years that companies don't know what to do with the data. They don't want to delete the data because they know that the data is useful, but they don't know what to do with the data. That's where data analysis has come in. That's where it has come in as a mainstream branch today. So my generation wrote and created that much data. Your generation is going to come in and draw inferences from that data. So the job has changed, but it has not gone away, right? So I am a firm believer, guys, that nothing like this is going. AI is not going to replace human, but yes, AI will replace those humans who don't want to change, right? So if there's a guy who says that, hey, you know what? The only thing that I can do is that I can input data into a computer. That's my job. Then I'll come and tell him, boss, why don't you do a different job? Because this job can be replaced by an AI, by a robot. He'll say, no, I'm not going to learn anything. This is what I'm going to do. That guy's job will definitely go, guarantee. But if you are a person who is willing to learn and adapt to new technologies and new ways of working that come in, all these things, your job is not going to go. You will just have better jobs. In fact, you will get paid more. And that's the reality, right? Today, imagine the amount of payment, the skill set scarcity that we have in AI. The people who are strong in AI, they are well-paid jobs, extremely well-paid jobs. Okay, sorry, there was a question.
Sir, they are maids which are made of robot AI are they are AI based maids are there, so they are replacing the maids, human maids. So sir, what you are saying that it can't replace humans, but in reality it's replacing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, guys. There will be, see, if you look at the value chain of jobs, okay, there will be some jobs which are hard labor jobs.
So it is just changing the traditional thing.
It is just, yeah, exactly my point, right? It's going to, see, newer jobs will get created. See, the way we look at it, right? We look at one job, right? I'll give you an example, right? So let's say there was, how many of you have seen cameras which has film in it? Do you know that cameras came with film earlier, right? You had to, buy one film from the market.
Yes,
sir. Put it in the camera, and then it is to take 36 photographs. You had 36 photographs that you could take. Correct? You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir.
Yes, sir.
Now there were companies. Can you name one company which was like one of the best when it comes to make film?
Kodak.
Kodak. You all remember, right?
Kodak,
you all remember
sir.
Kodak, right?
Yes, sir.
At that point of time, every child, every kid. So you guys, so I'm sure your children, they will not even understand what is that film, right? What do you do with it, and what happens? And can I just look at the film? The concept that, hey, I buy a film, I put it in a camera, I take 36 snaps, I then take that film out, then I go and give it to one shop, and then he gives me hard copy photographs. This entire concept, your children will not even be able to understand what you're saying, right? But you understand because you guys have at least seen that film. I have used it, right? In my generation, I have actually used that film. That's all. That's the only way I knew how to take photographs. Now, there were people who were making those films, correct? You agree that there were some people somewhere in the world who were experts in making that film.
Yes, sir.
Does that job exist today?
No, sir.
No, sir. No, sir.
What happened to those people? Did they all just go away, disappear somewhere? No, they did something different. What is Kodak doing today? It is doing something different, right? The point I'm making is that job has gone away. A guy who made films as his main job, that particular job is gone. That job doesn't exist. but that job has now got replaced by some other job. How do I make digital photography better? How do I use technology to enhance digital photography? How do I provide optical zoom in digital photography? These are new jobs. These are new areas of working. There are jobs available here now. So the job focus is always going to shift from what I am doing today may not be relevant tomorrow, but there will be something else that will be relevant tomorrow. So if I am a person who is willing to learn that something else, there will always be a job for me for the next million years, assuming the earth stays till then and the humans don't go and kill themselves. We will always have a job. So you're talking about that maid example, right? Yes. Today, for example, take India, right? India as a country is the human population or the human services enablers in this country is huge, right? You've got people to do everything for you. In the US, life is different. If I have to call one guy home and ask him to put a nail in my wall, right? He's going to come and charge me probably for 1 hour. It's going to take him maybe 10 seconds to put the nail, but that because there are not many humans who are doing that job. But there are a lot of machines available in the market where I can do it on my own. In India, there are maids available today because there is an industry that thrives and survives. Tomorrow, if these start getting replaced, and think about it, guys. How many of you have a washing machine at home? Now, is there anybody in this group who's going to tell me I don't? Maybe you don't as a student in your hostels, but in your homes you do, right? Now, just 10-15 years back or 20-25 years back, there was a job in the market where somebody came and washed your clothes. That job has gone away today because you've got washing machines. Today dishwashers will come, tomorrow something else will. Today you've got cooks who will come and cook food for you. That has now got replaced because you can easily order food, homemade food, using your mobile apps. But what is happening to those people? That cook is not gone away. Now that cook, instead of coming and working for you, that cook is now going to go and work for a restaurant or a business entrepreneur. So jobs will change, guys. Jobs, and yes, jobs will go away also. But you think of it for what does it mean for you? Again, I always like to go back to this. Just don't forget this slide, right? Your career is your responsibility. Your job, if you have to stay relevant in this industry for the future, you have to learn. And jobs will change. The way I did testing in 1999 is not the way you do testing today. So if I had not learned and I had said, no, I'm going to do testing exactly the same way that it happened in 1999, today I don't have a job. Nobody wants that kind of a skill, right? So jobs won't go. That's I'm a firm believer, but they will change. Yeah, sorry, there's a question.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. Sir, when I was in class, sir, when I was in class 10th, our IT teacher asked us to suggest an idea which we would like to implement in the future after becoming an engineer. So, sir, as my answer, I suggested that I would like to work on touchscreen flipping smartphones. But obviously now the idea has been implemented by many companies, including Samsung. So, sir, my question is that in this world where technological advancements are changing so fast, how can we as future entrepreneurs turn our startups into unicorn startups while also competing with these multinational companies?
Can you name a couple of unicorn startups that you know that happened in India?
Yes, sir.
Jabot.
Byju's, Zomato, Swiggy.
Oh,
yeah. What did these companies do differently?
Vedantu.
What did they do differently?
So they just took the study mode online, and
Education platform.
the pandemic boosted their
brought people
better
together.
service.
So they
No.
just complete their people's need.
Exactly. That's the answer. See, most important aspect, right? You have to first identify what is it that's a need for a human being, for an end user. What's the need? And needs are not just existing, needs can also be created, right? For example, I'll tell you, did people not study before Byju's came in? Did people not study and appear for exams and got into prestigious institutes like IITs before Byju's came in? What did Byju's do differently? Is it that, oh, because Byju's came in, children are now studying, otherwise, they were not really studying? No, that didn't happen. There was a way in which children were studying. Byju's came in, offered an alternative methodology to that study, right? Made it more interactive, made it more fun, made it more available, easily available to people, right? So things like, hey, you know what? I have to be in a particular city in a particular classroom to get a particular professor's education. But if that professor's education today is available to me online, then I can offer that same education, that same standard of education to 1 million users across the country. That's the need that they identified, and they worked on that need and they created a solution. They went with the solution to the public. You know how much marketing Byju's is doing? Don't forget that, right? See, one is that you create an idea. You have an idea of a flip phone. That's an
Yes,
idea you
sir.
have, right? But people have to know, right? Like if you're sitting in Vellore and you created a great product and only some 20 people in Vellore know about it, that's not going to make you a unicorn. You will need
Marketing is
to,
important.
Tushar Fadnis sitting in Pune also has to know about that idea, correct? And Narendra Modi sitting in
Yes,
Delhi
sir.
also has to know about that idea. So when you think of entrepreneurship, guys, having an idea is one part of it. But if you have to convert that idea into a business, anyway, this is a completely different discussion. We can probably have a different discussion on this, but I'll just give you a small nugget, right? Converting an idea to a business and converting a business, and growing it to become a unicorn are completely different topics, completely different things. If almost all of us, I can tell you, every day we'll have an idea, but you have to learn that one, how do I convert this idea into a business? How do I get people far and wide to know about this business? And then how do I run it well, really well, so that it then attracts large investors? People who have a lot of money will come and tell you that, hey, you know what, I have a lot of money, you have a great idea, good business, why don't we partner and take this business global, or at least pan India, right? That's where your unicorn concept comes in. So anyway, that's a different topic, guys, but a good question. But always remember that the answer is that it's not about which technology you have. It's not about anything of that sort. It is about what is your need that you're solving. Why will ask this question? You have an idea, fair enough. Why should Tushar pay money to you to use that idea? Why should I do it? I have limited money. I don't have like $1 trillion and I just rake up money and let's keep spending, right? I have a limited money. Why should I spend my money on your idea? If you can answer that question, then you have a business. Okay, anyway, we'll move on. Guys, it's already 12:30. So I don't know, some of you might have commitments. But I'm going to touch upon my last slide now, right? That what do I expect from engineers who come into my group, right? And largely, look, this is not like a, this is something that I personally have built. So I believe in it personally, that if you have to groom yourself, right? If you have to make it, and one important aspect, guys, right? That look, you're now coming out of college, you're entering an industry, right? You have to be marketable in the industry. What do I mean by that, right? Your first job, probably you will get because of the reputation of your institute, right? That you're coming out of a very reputed institute. A lot of companies will come for their, for campus interviews, and they will select some of you, and then you'll join the industry. That's your first job. Your subsequent jobs are going to have less contribution from your institute. It will still be there to some extent, but more contribution is going to be from you. What have you done? How have you changed yourself? What contribution did you do while you were doing your job, right? So the focus will move away from your institute and it will go on you, right? So when that is happening, that's a change where I have seen many fresh engineers, and trust me, even me, right? I'm no different, right? There's a lot of struggle that happens. And why does the struggle happen? Because when we are in college, we are so used to somebody telling us what to do, right? Your institute has laid out a clear plan for you that, hey, you know what, semester 1 we will study ABCD, semester 2 we will do something like this, semester 3 you will learn this. In the industry, nobody's going to do that. Nobody's going to tell you that, hey, first year you have to study R and Python, second year you have to, no. You have to decide that. You want to study R, you study R. You want to go to AR/VR, you do that. You want to go and do hardware product embedded engineering, you go and do that. Nobody's going to tell you that this is the path that I'm going to draw, and the next 20 years, if you work on this path, you will grow. So when that change happens, a lot of us struggle, including me, right? I'm taking my example also. So what I've tried to put here is that what should you, if you have to make yourself more marketable, what should you look to change in yourself, right? First and foremost, technical ability. It's a given. If somebody comes and takes your interview for let's say for a data analytics engineer or a informatica engineer, and you don't know informatica, obviously you're not going to be selected. It's as simple as that, right? So that's an easy one, right? But the important aspect for me, each one of these, I'll just point out one thing, right? Continual learning. You can't stop learning, guys, right? You just cannot do that. Not in this industry, not in any industry, more so in this industry, because the advances in this industry are so rapid and so quick that it is practically impossible for us to stay in touch with them, but we still have to make a concerted effort to do that, right? So you have to have technical ability. Without technical ability, you are not marketable. Simple, right? As simple as that. And technical
Sir?
ability will come through
Sir?
certifications, learning different technologies, expanding your scope, going deep maybe in one technology, but having a very good understanding about other technologies as well.
Sir?
Yeah.
I have a small doubt, sir. It might be a bit off topic, but I just want to get it clarified. Like, we are having huge technological advancements in AI now, sir. So, like,
yeah.
We as a human, what will be the negative effects and cons that we'll be facing with such advancements of AI?
See, I'll tell you, anything and everything that happens to me, and then this is my thought process, right? Anything and everything that happens in technology will always have a positive and negative impact. Always. It could be anything, right? Nuclear energy today. I mean, it's a very simple example, right? It's a very, very efficient form of energy, very, very safe way of creating energy, extremely environmental friendly way of creating energy, right? But what is the downside? The downside is that you can convert it to weaponize it, right? And again, if I were to joke about it, anything and everything today can be weaponized. So can your AI, right? So tomorrow, can AI not be weaponized? Of course, it can be weaponized, right? There will be a downside to it. Take your advances in why is data security such a big field today? It is probably one of the highest paid IT jobs today, right? Data security. Your security engineers, those new roles that I talked about, data detective, right? The amount of money that companies are spending today in protecting their IT landscape is huge. Why? Why do you need to spend so much money on data security? Why? Because there is a negative side to IT as well, right? It is, if your banks, for example, are not careful about their data security, your money in the bank can disappear within seconds. It can't it not, right? So yes, there will be a negative side to it. I really can't predict, and genuinely, I don't even want to. But yes, I'm pretty sure that AI will also be weaponized. When I say weaponized, I'm not just talking about military weaponization, but also I'm talking about using AI for fraudulent activities. But that can happen with anything, guys, right? So today there is so much debate happening. You can see, the Facebook CEOs and the Google CEOs get called by US Congress. They are questioned. Singapore government, summoned Mark Zuckerberg. He was questioned. See, there's a lot of scrutiny happening. So that tussle between, what is ethically right, morally right versus, the advancements on technology, that tussle is never going to go away. It's only going to increase as it goes further, right? Again, a very philosophical topic for me. I love talking about it, but think about it, right? I am not a person who will look at what will go wrong with this technology, right? I'm a person who wants to say, how can I use this technology to make life better for humans, for Indians, right? I mean, how do I use technology to make life better for an average Indian, for a guy who sells, vegetables on a food stall? How do I make life better for him? And when I build that technology, I'm sure somebody will come and say, oh, you know what, I can use this technology and fool some few people and make money. That's going to happen. But that cannot become a deterrent for me to not build that technology. That's my outlook, of course. So yes, AI also, to me, I also believe that yes, AI can be misused. AI probably is being misused as well by country. Why is it that there is so much scrutiny today by on US elections? You would have read about this, right? 2016 US elections,
Yes,
right?
sir.
There was a allegation that there were companies, I don't recollect the name, but
Russian
Cambridge
company.
Analytica, or the Russian influence on elections. What is that? That's AI. That's hardcore AI, right? You are influencing a person to vote for a particular party or a particular ideology. Is that right? Is that wrong? it's all up for debate, right? I mean, we can debate till the cows come home. But the fact is that yes, AI has already started seeing how I can use data. How can I today? In fact, in India, there is so much debate about Aadhaar card. Haven't you read about that? All of you would have read, right? That Aadhaar data will be misused. Aadhaar data will be misused. But I mean, look, that debate will continue forever. But does that mean that we should stop Aadhaar? No, because look at the immense benefit that Aadhaar has given to people. Today, I can sit at home and open a bank account. Today, I can sit at home and get a government job done just using Aadhaar. Right? So there will always be pros and cons. There will always be pluses and minuses. There will always be people who will use it for benefit of mankind and for personal gains. And that debate will never go away. It will never end. The more technology advances, the more this debate will become active. But as an IT engineer, I would recommend that you have to leave that behind and focus on just making life better for others. All right. So just quickly moving on, guys. Sorry.
Sir, you said jobs that are available today will be different tomorrow. So, sir, we should be like Elon Musk. We should develop multiple skills and start multiple startups and think like that.
See, first and foremost, the answer to your first question, do you develop multiple skills? Yes, answer is very clear, yes. Right? You cannot be a single skilled person today. And even if you are, see, having depth in one skill is different from you should definitely have depth in one or two core skills, but you should be aware of the other skills around in the market as well. You should be able to identify and be open to learning new technology. So the biggest challenge I face, when people join my teams. So somebody, let's say somebody joins in let me take a very rudimentary example again. Again, I'll go back to my Python example. Somebody learns Python and becomes a Python developer and starts working on Python. And a new technology comes in the market tomorrow. And I tell this guy, hey, we have a new project. And this guy says, no, I'm a Python developer. I want to work only in Python. And it's not about, can I not work in other technologies? Of course you can. But the answer is, I don't want to work in other technologies. This is the person who's going to have a tough time in the next 5 years. If you're willing to learn, continuously learn, you have abundance of jobs. Your jobs, in fact, you will have so many jobs, you will be at a dearth of which one do I choose. Coming to the second part of your question, now whether you want to start multiple startups or you want to focus on one startup and make it work, that's a business decision. And that decision is not going to be influenced only by technology. It's going to be influenced by multiple other factors, right? Availability of finances, market depth, and so many other things, right? So that's a different topic. See, one is the startup entrepreneur part of what you do. I think the place where when IT engineers come out of colleges, their focus is so much on technology, right? That for a startup, I need technology, right? And maybe technology is important. Of course it is. But your startup doesn't just mean technology. It means your ability to run a business. It's different. It's way, way different, right? If I were to just give a parallel, right? This is where an average guy who gets into job will get into running business. This is where an entrepreneur will get into running business, right? I don't know whether you can see my right. This is where an entrepreneur will get into running a business. This is where you will run a business when you get into a job or you join a company, right? Look at the difference. What we do here today is what an entrepreneur will have to do here, right? So it's great that you guys are thinking in that entrepreneurial mindset, but you will have to do a little bit more reading and understand that running a business is different from building an app. Building an app is an easy part of it. Converting the app into a business is the most difficult part of it. Building an app you can do today because you have the skills. Your college has taught you that. Converting the app into a business is something that you will learn. You will fall, you will get up, you will fall again, you will get up, you will learn. Right? Getting money for the business, sustaining the money, growing that money, creating a profit out of that money is way, way different from building an app. Building an app is easy. Everybody on this call will do it. Everybody on this call will build an app. I can guarantee you that. Only a few of this in this call will actually convert that into a business, right? So just look at this differently and you're on the right track, right? I will really encourage you that you have role models, read about how they converted their businesses. You will learn a lot about, I have an idea, but I want to convert that idea into a business. What do I do? Okay. Anyway, let's close this, and then I've already overshot. Don't know whether that works for how many it works for, but let me quickly close this slide. This is my last slide, right? Please focus on your communication, right? The important one for me, ability to express yourself. So many of you have asked me questions, right? That's great. This is what is required, right? If you can ask questions, you will learn. If you keep that question inside your brain, you will not learn, because somebody else will have to ask the question before you to get the answer. And if that somebody never asks the question, you never get your answer, right? So communication, please focus on your written and verbal communication skills. Extremely, extremely important. Why is it important? Because look, at some point of time, guys, you're going to talk to customers. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to talk to customer tomorrow. If you're in a job, you're going to start talking to customers maybe a year down the line, right? And how do you convince someone? How do you talk to someone? How do you tone your communication? How do you use the right words? Right? It's all important, right? So this is again, I'm saying this is just one part. This is something that we all focus on. This is not something that we focus on, and this is what really goes and causes problems for us later. Teamwork. See, if you are not a person who can work with a team, your team won't work with you. And this is, IT is about teamwork. It's not that, there's one person who comes and builds a software. It's always a team that builds a software. It's always a team, right? So for me, what is important? Collaborate, don't compete. Look, competition is a part and parcel of our life, right? We are, sadaiva, every time, all time of the day, we are competing, right? But learn to collaborate, right? A joint success. Take a simple example, cricket team, right? Let's say somebody scores a century, but we lost the match. How does it help? It doesn't help, right? And if you have, I remember one interview I was watching, Sachin Tendulkar's interview. He had actually scored a century. We lost a match, and he was extremely unhappy. He said, look, yeah, I may have scored a century, but I lost the match. My team lost the match, right? So teamwork is important. Leadership skills, guys. Now, leadership is not about that, hey, when you grow and become 10 years experience, then you become a manager and then you have become a leader. No, leadership skills start today, right? Leadership skill is about owning your deliverable. And that's very, very important for me. I'm going to ask you this question, right? How many of you, if your professors tell you that you need to submit something on the 5th of a month, every month, how many of you have owned that and said that not even once in my entire tenure in this college, I will submit it on the 6th. It will always be on the 5th, come what may. That's owning your deliverable, right? That's owning that, hey, I am responsible for this work. Only I can deliver this. And I have a commitment that I have made, and I'm going to stick to that commitment, right? So owning your deliverables is a part of leadership. Fearless communication. If you think you have a different idea, like so many of you, right? You have so many ideas, you talk to me, we bounced ideas of each other, right? Develop that skill, that don't shy away from saying what you have to say. Don't wait for others to say something that you want to say. And and trust me, this is easier said than done, right? Many of us inherently are not those kind of people who will speak up in public or who will oppose somebody else in public, right? But remember this, everything is not about confrontation, right? Sometimes there is a good confrontation. And we do this in my industry. We do this, we have a brainstorming session. What is a brainstorming session, right? A bunch of us get together and we bounce ideas of each other. We're not making somebody else's idea look bad, but we are trying to build upon that guy's idea to make it better, right? But for that, this is so important, right? Fearless communication. Attitude. I mean, 100 times somebody would have tell you, right? Have a positive attitude, have a positive attitude. But for me, this is what makes that positive attitude, right? First and foremost, develop a sense of curiosity. So many of you again ask questions, that why and the why not questions are so important. It's the most important thing, right? If something is working, your ability to ask why, something is not working, your ability to ask why is it not working? And something is really working well, your ability to ask why not make it better, right? Yet curiosity has to be there, discipline has to be there. See, these are all, sometimes I've seen so many engineers who are so good in their technology, right? They are like probably the best developers, they are the best testers, But I've seen so many managers who don't want them in their team. And I've always asked myself, why? Why does that happen? I mean, if this guy is so good technically, why is it that his manager doesn't want him in the team? And it all boils down to these other things, right? Hey, boss, this guy is very good, but he doesn't collaborate. It's always about, my code has to be the best. My code is the best. Everybody else's code is bad. There's no discipline here. I give this work to this guy. He commits to me that he will do it by Friday. And when Friday morning, when I go and ask him, he says, no, it is not complete. Why couldn't he come and tell me on Wednesday that it is not going to be complete? Right? See, these are the things I'm hearing, right, from my managers. So I'm only trying to draw this point to you guys, that because most of us spend hours and hours trying in this area. Very, very few of us try to look at ourselves and ask that hard question that, am I doing something in these other areas, right? And last but not the least, productivity, guys. Deliver on time, plan your work. Deliver on time to me is the most, if I have made a commitment to my customer that I'm going to deliver something, yes, things can go wrong. I understand that. But if things have not gone wrong and you have not delivered, then there is something wrong in you, right? Attention to details, right? Something that we really miss. And I'm very sorry to say this, but many times I've seen people that they run, they run 90 miles, maybe 99 meters, but just that last 1 meter, they don't run or they don't pay attention to the detail, right? Simple things, right? If you go to the market and you're buying 2 books, and guys, I'm telling you, this would have happened with you, right? 2 books, same book, but one which has been printed shabbily and one which has been printed on a nice paper, right? And assuming that the price difference between the two is not much, you will spend that little extra money to buy the book which is printed on a nice quality paper. The print is very legible, easily readable. You will spend that extra money. Why? Because somebody went that extra mile to make sure, paid attention to details, and did not put a shabby product into the market or did not give a shabby deliverable. I have seen so many times that my engineers on the ground, they will write a great code, but the document that they have to prepare to explain that code is so shabbily created that after looking at the document, you don't even feel like looking at the code. Right? So guys, I'm going to leave it here. This is my last slide, but please look at this, make notes if you want, but remember this, that your ability to get your first job is on this. This will give you your first job. This will give you your growth. If you want to grow, if you want to be successful, even if you want to run your own business and you want to be an entrepreneur, this will give you the idea. This will make your business successful. So don't focus only on this. That's my only last thing that I want to say. Focus on all this as well. And then trust me, you will have a very, very fulfilling career in whatever you do. So I'm going to leave it at that, guys. We are already past time. So Prakash, Senthil,
Yeah.
Thank you,
do we
sir.
have time for questions or should we close now?
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Sir, how do you choose what to learn and what not to learn? Because there are millions of topics and you can learn anything, everything.
A very, very good question, man. In fact, that's a tussle that even I keep having, right? See, there are 2 things that are going to make you learn. First is your passion, right? What do you like? What interests you? What drives you? What makes you happy? That's the first thing. Second is your necessity, right? What does that mean? Sometimes you will get into a job and you will be in that competitive environment. And if you want to grow, you will have to learn certain things, right? It may not be your passion. It may not be the most interesting topic for you, but you still have to learn that, right? And look at it this way. When you got into college, you probably had what, maybe 20 subjects across the all 4 years, 24 subjects. Did you like all of them? No, but you liked some of them. And the some that you liked, you probably read more, you spent more time, you did more research. Whenever you went into Google, you tried to understand more. But some you learned because it was your necessity. Because if you had not learned that, you would have failed and you wouldn't go into the next class. So your learning is going to get driven in your career by both these two. But for me, the important thing is for you to know what's your passion. What do you like? What drives you? Many of you ask me questions about AI, right? Maybe that drives you. Right? Maybe there are others that maybe they get driven more by hardware, right? They are more intrigued by what's happening on the hardware side, right? So your learning, I mean, look at it this way, right? Forget about your academic learning. Forget about your job learning. What do you learn in life? Some of you like sports, so you go and learn more about the sport. Some of you like music, so you're probably joined classes, you're learning music. Now, why are you doing this? Because that's your passion. That's what drives you. That's what makes you happy. That's what brings a smile to your face. And hence you're willing to invest time in learning. Some of you learn languages. When you get into your career, same things are going to drive you. The problem is that sometimes your necessity of learning overpowers your passion of the subject, right? So you may have a interest in AI, but your job demands that you learn something different. And that's where that little bit of a tussle happens. But remember this, both are important. You will, and these are the two things that will drive your learning going forward. So I really can't answer the question and say, hey, learn AI, it's great. No, that may be my interest, but it may not be your interest, right? So you will have to understand what's your passion, start learning that. The most fulfilling job you will ever have is if your necessity and your passion work together, which means you're in a job that you love, that in an area that you love. So if you love music and you're in a job that pays you through music, then you're going to love that job, right? But if you're a guy who loves music, you actually hates a corporate job, but you're in the corporate job, then you will always have that tussle, right? Because what you like is different. So try to see, it's not easy, but try to see if you can build a career in what you like. Then your learning automatically gets driven. Your necessity driven learning and your passion driven learning are the same.
Sir, I have one doubt.
Yep.
Sir, is it better to be a jack of all trades but master of none, or jack of one trade and master of that one?
A beautiful question. What's your name?
Harini.
Harini. Okay, fantastic question. Okay. See, we'll be very honest with you, right? There's really no right answer, but I'll tell you this much, right? Always develop depth in something. Could be anything, right? So you have to develop depth in one area. But that doesn't mean that that's the only area that you will work on. See, that the biggest challenge that happens is that one is that there is the jack of all trades who's on the left extreme, and then there's a master of one who's on the right extreme, right? To me, both these are extremes, and both these will not make you successful. The reality lies somewhere in between, right? So for me, it is like this. Your career has to be like a T. If you write a T, T, the alphabet T, right? So T has a horizontal line, it has a vertical line. A T is made by both the horizontal line and the vertical line, right? The vertical line is the depth in one or two topics, and the horizontal line is the breadth of knowledge across the spectrum. And that to me is the most fulfilling position to be in. You will need to have depth in one or two topics, but you'll need to have a very broad understanding of the entire spectrum. And if you are that kind of a person, then you will be able to have a very fulfilling conversation with everybody, right? Because in some places where you are the master, you can have a very detailed conversation, but in other places where you're not the master, you can still have a very good conversation, at least up to a point where you need someone else now who has that depth. So try to be a T and not be in one of these extremes. And I hope I have answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir?
Yeah, go on.
Sir, my question is that we had an amazing session on how AI is impacting and will impact the future. But on technology on a general basis, there's quite a different impact that it has on the jobs in the organized sector than those in the unorganized sector. So as we, the young developers, how do we access that difference and help the jobs and the people who are in the unorganized sector, especially in a country like India?
Okay, I'm going to give you a suggestion. I want you to look at a video by a person called Captain Raghuram. Have you heard of him?
No, sir, I have not.
Captain Raghuram.
Yes, sir.
He's part of the Reliance Group. He has a very beautiful topic on this exact same question that you asked, organized sector and unorganized sector. Okay, so watch that. Not, later on, sometime in this week or over the weekend, you can watch that, right? But look at it this way, right? When we build solutions, see, first and foremost, let me be very honest here, right? Where does the money come from? Personally, if you ask me, it comes from the organized sector, because organized sector has got future plans, they've got a vision, they've got, and they're sitting on cash, right? And they want to build that vision, and there's a lot of money that is sitting there. But you know, the fun part of it in India, especially the unorganized sector also has huge money potential. Just that it's not sitting with one person. It's not sitting with one person. It's not sitting with one company. It is sitting in the hands of millions of people, right? And because it is sitting in the hands of millions of people, tapping into that money or tapping into that potential is a bit harder, or a lot harder if you ask me, right? But think back, right? Just think back to 10, 15 years. Again, I'll go to take the payments example today, right? Has the payments capability not reached the unorganized sector today? It has reached them. It has reached them. Simple things, right? Opening a bank account. And if I open a bank account, I get a life insurance and I get insurance for my daughter, my education insurance for my daughter, by paying a very, very small sum, 120 rupees, 130 rupees. Right? These are certain schemes that got started, and these schemes got accentuated because of the way IT was able to provide that quick access, right? Open a bank account, use your Aadhaar card, open a bank account, get your insurances, you're done. Right? Payments, right? A person who's a vegetable vendor today, or who's selling, who's probably has a small dosa stall on the corner, or a vada pav stall if you're in the Pune, Mumbai area, right? That guy's ability. So how many customers does this guy attract? This guy attracts all those. So let's say I have a stall in a railway station, near a railway station. Who's my customer base? My customer base is people who go and catch trains. That's my customer base, correct? Today, that guy, because he has adopted certain measures, certain payment ways, he's probably using certain simpler apps, maybe not as sophisticated as Swiggy, but he has now been able to expand that customer base, not just to people who come to the railway station, but also to the locality and the buildings which are within maybe a 1 kilometer radius. How did that happen? That happened because somebody thought of an idea that said that, hey, I'm going to tap into the unorganized sector. I'm going to create something. It will be slightly more difficult for me to tap or create a business model out of it, but I will do it. And trust me, when you listen to Captain Raghuram speaking, right, he will talk about the potential of the unorganized sector in India. Unfortunately, you don't have many people who are really spending money and focusing on drawing the potential of the unorganized sector, but it is there, it exists, and a huge potential exists. So if you have an idea, then work on that idea, right? Think of how you will work on that idea, and you create a business model out of it. See, your business has to be sustainable for yourself, your staff, and also has to meet the need, right, of an end customer. If you find that need, and you're able to create a business out of it, I think there's a huge potential in the unorganized sector as well, especially in India.
Thank you, sir. Thanks. I'm Prakash. So,
hey, Prakash. Hi.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So I think we are way past the time. I hope this has been useful for you. And
yes,
trust me, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah.
So thank you all. And
Yeah,
I
please
wish
hold
you
us
that.
a small thank you note for it.
Oh, yeah, please. Sure. Go on.
Thanks for accepting our invitation to the webinar on career opportunities. We are thankful to you for sharing your expertise views with our students. Your talk on what do we do for career opportunities, career path of an IT engineer, and mantra for growth, which fascinates and inspires many of our students. Thank you once again. We want to thank Professor V. Anandakrishnan and Dr. A. Aroki Selvakumar, Assistant Directors, Career Development Center, VIT Chennai, for helping us to find such a nice resource person. We thank Dean, School of Computer Science Engineering, for allowing us to conduct a webinar on career opportunities. Finally, thanks to CTS team, VIT Chennai, and special mention to Mr. G. Vishweshwaran for conducting this webinar without any obstacles. Last but not least, I should thank all the students who participated in this webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.